Hi, this is David Hetherington with McCoy Power Reports. Thanks very much for making time to listen to our call today, and thanks very much to our featured guests for making themselves available. During the latter half of 2017, a string of events indicated how the gas turbine market and the wider thermal market in general were going in a new direction, one that required some resizing of infrastructure at the major power gen equipment suppliers and probably a good many other firms as well. All of the doom and gloom created a curiosity to find out how other technologies were performing, what those companies think of the current market, and how they view their own prospects for the next 5 years. This brings us to today's call, and we are very proud to host Michael Bachmann from Wärtsilä, which manufactures reciprocating engines for the marine and power gen industries, Bob Kraft from Powerphase, which optimizes gas turbine utilization. We'll spend about 20 minutes chatting with each company about their technology and how they see their markets developing in the near term. We first turn to Wärtsilä. So, Michael, are you there?
Yes, David, thank you. I'm here.
Awesome. If you could, I guess at first just kind of go through how you view your technology and how it is uniquely positioned in today's markets, responding to today's demands, and what kind of makes Wärtsilä's technologies better than others.
Sure, be happy to. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Michael Bachmann of Wärtsilä. I head up our North American operations here in the U.S. As David mentioned, Wärtsilä is a manufacturer of large reciprocating engines. Among other things, we also have a storage group as well included there. But basically, we, in the power solutions or in the energy solutions side, focus on flexibility. That's kind of where we started. I was speaking a little bit about, as David mentioned, how the markets have changed in the last couple of years. That's certainly true. They've really gone through a transformation. And we're kind of excited about where we're headed here. I think last year we had our best year ever here in North America. The old view of kind of mid-merit or base load and peaking is kind of transformed, and where we see it now going is really about flexibility and renewables. And we're focusing on that flexibility side, whether it's with our gas engines or our energy storage products. This kind of started in the high wind and solar areas here in the U.S. in the central and southwest. And if you're still today developing kind of a base load asset, in terms of coal or nuclear or very large combined cycle plants, that's getting more and more difficult here, and as well as it is in Europe. With increased levels of these renewables, we get some more volatility in the supply and certainly a lot more volatility in the pricing in the markets where our customers operate. And the markets are also moving to a shorter dispatch, meaning we have real-time markets dispatching in 5 minutes. And at some point, we'll fully move into, I believe, also a settlement in real time down to 5-minute increments. And that will have a major driver for our type of flexibility. And we believe in these short-term electricity markets, real-time markets, can really extract the inherent flexibility that already exists out there in the installed base and incentivize new flexibility to be installed. A lot of people say, well, is it gas or is it storage and so on? We really think that's an either-or question. We believe that both storage and flexible gas or flexible thermal has a role to play, and they're many times complementary, but also have distinct services to play with a frequency control or energy ramping or peaking and so on that's being supplied. So it's not really an either-or question. But if you look to what is the value of this flexibility that we kind of supply into the marketplace, we mainly supply to utilities and IPPs in the U.S. We're closing in on 4 gigawatts installed here in the U.S. right now, with about 65 gigawatts installed worldwide. If I give a kind of really basic example of a utility that would have installed flexible generation, in some of the energy-only markets like ERCOT, SPP, there's a discount in the real-time market on energy versus the day ahead. And by having a flexible plant installed, a utility can procure their energy in the real-time market rather than in the day ahead and access discount. And the flexible asset, in one term, then with the Wärtsilä engines, provides them a kind of physical hedge to cap their exposure in that market while accessing the cheaper energy. That's a really kind of basic example of how these are used for some of our assets. A little bit more than that, they can also then generate at peak in those real-time markets. When you see a price spike in the real-time market, it tends to be the first, let's say, 3, 4, 5-minute increments that carries the majority of the spike in price. And after that, 15, 20 minutes, some other assets start coming online and the price goes down. With a 200 megawatt power plant or scalable to whatever it needs to be, that can start up in 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you can, with a little bit of foresight into what the pricing will be, you can capture those price spikes, whether they're in regulation or whether they're in energy markets or whatever they happen to be. And additional net revenue, whether you're a generator or that revenue will lessen your cost to supply electricity as a utility. So in addition to kind of accessing the real time, you can also then generate in the real time. And then when we get to the really combining that with market operations, today we see very attractive prices for renewable energy PPAs in the market. You can find solar or wind PPAs for sub $20 a megawatt hour, between mid to high teens today. And of course that is non-dispatchable, but if you combine your market operations with some installed flexibility, you can really create a supply of very low cost renewable energy, plus having the flexibility from the asset that you own. We have utilities today that are installing our plants, and by doing that, plus using market operations and buying renewables in the marketplace, they have half their cost of electricity while decreasing emissions by 70% at the same time. So there's a tremendous value to be unlocked by having that flexibility and accessing the energy that's available in the marketplace. So and also, like we mentioned, as a generator, the more volatility in the real-time market has more value as well. And we're excited about the move for the actual 5-minute settlement as well, because the revenues for a generator, when you settle in 5 minutes instead of getting paid, the average hourly pricing actually increases a lot. These type of assets, as I mentioned, they can start up in 2 to 5 minutes from standby to full load. They can set at their minimum load down to 10% and ramp up to full load in seconds, with at least less than a minute. But if they're not in the money, they will be out, will shut down in less than a minute and be out of the market. So you can really capture those 5-minute increments of price spikes. Some of the kind of value attributes that kind of go into these being utilized are obviously the higher flexibility, the faster starting and stopping, like I mentioned, higher ramp rate. There's no cost or maintenance cost that's related to the starting. We have plants that start thousands of times per year without any sort of wear or cost associated with it. And the lower minimum load is actually more important than you normally think, to be able to set at 10% and then ramp up quickly. And also for renewable integration, that's usually even on a system scale or portfolio scale, it's really the backing down enough when the solar peaks becomes a problem. Well, when your minimum load for a large utility plant is 10%, efficiently running at 10%, then that makes a whole lot of value for the renewable integration. As I mentioned, the quick start. Yep.
Michael, can I ask a few questions? It sounds like, first of all, I just wanted to back up a little bit. You've got 4 gigawatts here in the U.S., 65 worldwide. How much? I guess I want to just get into the key drivers here. We're certainly the renewables here in North America, and the 5-minute market is going to be a big driver. Do you see a lot of new development coming out of the 5-minute market?
We see there's a lot of more value being able to quantify that value. There's always been an inherent value of that flexibility, but when you have a 5-minute settlement, you can more easily quantify what is the value I can extract out of that. So a generator can see this historically and by projection, seeing what will be the revenues in that 5-minute market. So it's definitely kind of giving us the insight and the clarity into the value of that flexibility.
So the installed base picks up a lot of value based on that market move.
Yeah, that's right. But also, it's not necessarily the value of the flexibility is not necessarily so obvious when looking at the dispatch. Like I mentioned, a utility that's procuring in a real time, he's actually not running those engines, even though providing value for him. So there's a lot of inherent value attributes that are not shown in the operational dispatch of the plant, per se.
Well, we developed that, though. So I think you're only paid on how much you're actually generating, correct? So what's the value? So talk through that.
So that now I'm looking at it from the point of a load-serving utility, for example, and he may be able to procure cheaper energy in the real-time market by having these 5-minute start engines that in case the price spikes, he has a physical hedge for that, and that allows him to do it. If he didn't have that 5-minute generation, he could be exposed to the volatility in the real-time market, and you don't need a lot of hours at $9,000 per kilowatt hour or megawatt hour to cost you a lot of money. But they can have tremendous value by not running. I think one of the utility managers told me years ago, I make most of my money when the engines are not running, and I thought, well, it's going to be hard to make that into a marketing slogan, but so there's a lot of inherent value in the quick start as a physical hedge.
So the utilities will buy a lot of renewables that are very cheap right now, and then they hedge it with your engines.
Yes, and also accessing real-time markets where you have a discount versus buying energy in the day ahead. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so are all the ISO TSOs moving to the 5-minute market, or is that regional here in the U.S.?
Yeah, most ISOs already have a dispatch in the 5 minutes. What's coming, and there's been some back and forth, is also the settlement. So you actually get paid the 5-minute price instead of an average of the 5-minute increments over an hour. And that makes a big difference for a flexible asset as a generator.
Gotcha. So over the past year, you actually feel like the prospects for your engines here in North America have gone up because of this market move?
Absolutely. We're very excited. We feel the markets are going towards flexibility, and that's kind of where we are at, and at the maximum flexibility that you can get out of any thermal assets. Like I said, last year was our best year ever in North America, and I would definitely feel like this is going the right direction from that perspective.
And how robust is the pipeline here in North America for the next few years, or the conversations you're having? How meaningful are they? Does it look like more record years coming?
We are excited from also what's happening within the segments. To be honest, given historically, our power plants are used mainly by public utilities, munis and co-ops, and there's a limit to that market, but we are probably the leader, we feel like, in that market. Last year, majority of our assets went to investor-owned utilities, which is a much bigger market than the public market. So we're seeing more and more sales or business with investor-owned utilities, which is a substantial market. But we're also seeing the IPPs now finding interest in flexibility rather than just developing combined cycles for energy. So we see this as actually a growing market, and very excited about it.
So given utilization is not necessarily the sweet spot, how do you track? Well, I guess. Well, let me digress a second. So that's here in North America. So you like your prospects, but globally, also there's a lot of. Obviously, you guys are doing very well in emerging markets as well. Is there what's the sort of the application overseas? How has that business trended, and was that performance last year? Near record performance as well.
Yeah, and obviously, the markets, global markets are on and off from year to year, but we had several markets that were record-setting last year, and for different reasons, need for the move to gas from oil. Some of them have developed advanced electricity markets, similar to here in the U.S., like in Australia, for example. They have markets that are very, very similar. So there you will find the similar value for flexibility as well. Europe hasn't really gone there yet, but we hope that there will be, Europe coming back as well at some point. But yeah, so the globally everything is very good. There's a little bit of different value attributes, but in the long run, we see many markets going in the same direction as the U.S. By installing renewables that will have a low operational cost, and then you will have the value of flexibility coming in at some point. And even without renewables, if you inject in any utility portfolio, inject flexibility that we provide, that generation will take all that dynamic dispatches, starting, stopping, ramping, everything else that kind of costs something for the other type of generation to do. So by installing that flexibility, you optimize that portfolio. The large combined cycles or the coal or whatever they may be can run at their optimal efficiencies, their lowest emissions, and so on. So there's a portfolio optimization effect from the flexibility, even if you don't have high levels of renewable energy in it.
All these big power plants I see you guys selling in the Middle East and other emerging markets, are you saying that's also flexibility for the fossil plants that are there, or are those running for base load?
A few could be a true base load, but in many cases they're kind of what somebody called flexible base load. But in many cases they are optimizing a portfolio or optimizing a system by taking the ramping, the starting, the part loading, and so on, and providing value from that perspective. Not all of them have the renewable level, certainly, that we're seeing here in the U.S., but there are usually some attribute of flexibility in there, absolutely.
So it's a flexibility play globally. Basically, it's the same application to different degrees depending on the market.
Yes, you could say that, yep.
Okay. Just curious, you're turned down at 10%. What's the thermal efficiency at that level?
You may lose a couple of percent of efficiency. Let's say you're maybe at 48 before and you go down to 45 or in that range. I'm not an expert on it, but the nice thing with these plants is that you put a lot of units in. You put in 10 or 20 units, so you had two ways. You can pull them all down to 10%, and you would still be, below 10,000 heat rate. Or you can cascade the engines on and off, and your minimum load in that case is 2% of the plant output. And then you would be at the same heat rate as you're at full load if you cascade the engines off. So that's kind of gives you a flat heat rate curve.
And simple cycle GT thermal efficiency at their minimum loads are more like 40%, right?
Yeah, if that, depending on the unit, yeah. Yep.
And their thermal efficiency is about 35%?
Yeah.
Okay. So is North America your number one market globally?
It's probably, I don't know if it's the biggest market, but it's certainly an important market to us. And it's really kind of, I think, showing the way what we see later on in other markets as well.
And is it the number one market in terms of prospects over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's difficult to say. Some of these markets, come up and like Indonesia came up or Bangladesh came up, and Argentina was the market, some years ago. So it's hard to say if it's the biggest, but it's certainly one of our most important markets for sure, yes.
Gotcha. So basically the pressure the renewables are putting on to the grids, y'all are providing a solution, flexibility solution, and so therefore that makes the prospects for your business more robust, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and we think this is not going to change around sometime soon. The cost of renewables is there, and so we do watch what's going to happen to renewable deployments when the tax incentives are going away and so on. But we believe that they're now on a cost level that the projection we're on will continue, and flexibility will be a major source of value for power systems too for a long time.
Okay. Now, the gas turbine industry 5 years ago was basically saying the very same thing. Understanding the technologies is very different, but what might happen which would endanger the recip in the strategic position in the power grid right now, if anything?
We don't really see that. As I said, there is some discussion. I know in the marketplace, will battery storage be used instead of gas-fired flexible peakers and so on? But that's what I think where we see that's it's more a complementary. Sure, you may do frequency control, for example, frequency regulation with batteries instead of using engines or any gas generation. But all at the same time, peaking or long-term system ramping and so on will still be needed from generation assets that actually generate something. So we see complementary value there. And we don't really see any huge, tremendous changes that will take out the value of flexible generation.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much for your thoughts. I'm going to switch now over to Bob Kraft of Powerphase, if that's all right. Bob, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Thanks for your patience, Bob. Hope all is well. I guess could you take a few minutes to describe the strategic advantages of Powerphase?
So Powerphase is a relatively new company, and if you look at all the value propositions that were just described about the Wärtsilä product, you can kind of think about our product that way. Basically, we also have a power and a storage system, and however, it goes at an existing power plant. But the whole, this flexibility and the minimal maintenance and providing that physical hedge for the grid to support renewables is really where we're at. So effectively, we have a very, very similar value proposition, as the Wärtsilä system, except the way we do it is quite a bit differently. Instead of using a reciprocating engine to put power on the grid quickly, we use a much smaller reciprocating engine to generate air, compressed air, hot compressed air with a new process called Turbine, and we inject that air in a existing combined cycle plant and get, typically 50 to 100 megawatts of power at a large combined cycle plant in less than 60 seconds at a heat rate between 6,7,500, or 50 to 60% thermally efficient. So, like I said, we have a very similar value proposition as the Wärtsilä equipment. The key difference is that we go at an existing power plant, and we just add one key ingredient that's typically missing at a power plant, and that's air. Because these gas turbines are designed for super cold operation, and typically, there's a lot of capacity in the whole mechanical and electrical system to put more power out. So we take advantage of that, and consequently, we're able to put something in much smaller, much more cost effectively, and provide this really fast acting power to provide that hedge.
Right. Where on the turn down do you all will you all typically be helping? Is it really more towards the upper end of output, or is it really across the spectrum?
It is across the spectrum, because basically with our storage system, you can imagine these power plants, they suck in air, and they put fuel in and they make power in the generator, and our storage system actually can take some of that air and store it and put out less power when you need more turn down. So it effectively adds turn down to the plant. And then when you need more power to provide this physical hedge for the renewables, you can have it stored, and you can put the air back in with the storage system, or you can generate it with our reciprocating engine driven Turbine process. So, similar to the Wärtsilä, we would typically put in 10 or 20 modules, and each one of these modules basically has a 2.5 megawatt high-speed reciprocating engine in it, but it generates 6 or 7 megawatts of power at this 50 to 60% thermally efficient point, because of our patented process, and it does it, very quickly.
So the trends, I mean, you're in a unique position because you guys have developed this product over the past several years, and you're coming to market now. And so sort of an earlier stage company, I guess, would be more sensitive to changes in the market. So I think this is fascinating dialogue. So first, just wanted to recap. You guys have a fairly star-studded group of investors in your group, including utilities, correct?
Yeah, we just took on a series of strategic investors, and they're strategic because they're utilities, and basically this physical hedge that our product offers these utilities lets them operate their existing assets in a way that they've never been able to operate before, giving them between 5 and 10% grid efficiency improvement. So literally, it's a couple decades worth of efficiency improvement that they can, directly turn around to emission savings, fuel savings, and ratepayer savings on electricity, cost of electricity.
So one trend we've noticed over the past few years, and maybe everyone else has noticed as well, is the utilization, at least here in the U.S., of the gas turbine fleet has been strong. There was a mild winter last year, but 2016 was a record year, and 2017, despite the hurricanes and a warm winter, are still pretty good. And yet the original equipment market has declined somewhat significantly to levels not seen in a couple decades on some measures. So I guess that's kind of a market turn right into your sweet spot, which is utilizing existing assets more optimally.
Right. And, with these, especially here in the U.S., we're just extremely excited with these utility now strategic partners. I mean, there's some of the biggest names in the industry, like Southern Company and Excel are, for example, part of that. And, we also have a direct investment from Clear Sky, which is an investment arm for one of the FPL utilities, or the Florida utilities. It's really exciting to see these guys they're looking at it and they're saying, wow, this coal plant came off a little faster than we expected, and we got X number of gigawatts of solar coming on a little faster than we expected, and they're really feeling the pain at these power plants of this intermittency of the renewables, and the gas turbines are taking the brunt of supplying that flexibility. And like you said, our product really hits the sweet spot of that and gives the plant, 5 or 10% more turn down, 5 or 10% more, I'll call it the top end, and that flexibility that it offers it in less than 60 seconds start time, and once it's up and running, less than 10 second, call it 0 to full power, and back. So it's a hyper flexible, and like I said, just because we're only adding air to the cycle, our process is relatively small. If you look at our piece of equipment, it looks like a 2 megawatt genset package, but it generates 6 or 7 megawatts at up to 60% efficiency. So it's a really nice tight little package. It's actually very movable since it's small. So you could put it at a place where you need the power today, and maybe you got another challenge 2 or 3 years from now, and you can go pick it up and move it over to the next place. So it has some flexibility from that respect too.
Yeah. Okay. So how many installs do you all have, if it's okay to ask?
Sure. We had our first, I call it prototype system go in at Morris Cogen up in Chicago in the middle of 2014, and that really kicked off a global process, I'll say, where people really recognized the fact that this product actually exists. We had a few hundred customers over the last few years come through that plant, and we have a pipeline of over 300 customers in probably 40 different countries now, with install in Saudi Arabia and in Malaysia, with about 10 other key countries getting seeded this year in 2018. Japan and
so which of those? Sorry if I'm interrupting, but which of those markets are sort of the most exciting right now internationally for you?
Well, for us, since we're a small company, they're all exciting. But for example, last year we signed an MOU in Indonesia for 2.5 gigawatts of incremental power at their existing plant, and literally selling it to them at a small fraction of what they normally pay for that generation, and at an efficiency point that 2.5 gigawatts. Yeah.
What's that? You're measuring? Yeah. Take me through that.
So we would go at call it a 1,000 megawatt power plant, and we'd add 100 to 150 megawatts.
So the 2.5 gigawatt is the incremental?
Yes, the incremental.
Wow. Okay. Great.
And
that's exciting.
What's unique about our product also is if you look at it, it's this small container-looking piece of equipment, and it literally works on every gas turbine on the planet, because every gas turbine on the planet does basically the same thing: compresses air, adds fuel, and since we're just adding air, it doesn't care if it's 50 or 60 hertz, if it's an LM6000 or a Siemens H-class machine. It's just air, compressed hot air. So we have a serial production piece of equipment that's very rapidly scalable to address markets that are emerging and very similar to the Wärtsilä story. And I really, it's amazing to watch those guys work. I think they do a great job. And have a great product. We're basically creating a new market. As the market is changing and valuing this flexibility and how to deal with the renewables, having something that provides that physical hedge. I like that word you used, the physical hedge to the power plant and the need for incremental power if and when a renewable falls off. That's so important these days. So this market is developing, and consequently, new products are developing and becoming more popular.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say. Sorry, I want to get to the market prospects here for you guys. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, and we just fit right into that niche.
Yeah. Right. So let's call 2017 2.5 gigawatts, or maybe more than that if you had some others. What do you think of incremental capacity you're providing? What do you think you'll do this year, next year, in 5 years? What do you think it looks like?
We're targeting maybe 250 megawatts this year, and the interesting thing about this is, with all the utilities we're working with, all the government-owned generating companies, like the Indonesia example, for example, we're basically doing our seed. It's their trial, the test, and they want to see it operate in their grid, in their environment, and so on. And then, because of the serial production and the type of product we generate, literally in 6 or 7 months, we could, generate 500 megawatts worth of stuff and put it on the ground. So we're expecting a truly rapid expansion of the market as for our product, once we get these markets seeded. And 2018 is going to be a big year for us, seeding the markets.
Okay. And you see, and so you're saying you're expecting 250 megawatts for 2018 and going up incrementally from there.
Yeah.
Okay. As you move from market to market, we've sort of had some chat here on the flexibility here in the U.S. market and some of the other markets internationally, but Indonesia is more of an emerging market with, I would presume, limited renewables. So it's an existing base that they need to optimize. As you go internationally, what other markets are you seeing the most interest in, and how big do you think those markets are?
We're also our system provides quite a bit of value to industrial processes, gas turbines running industrial processes, where their profitability is measured on how much output they can or how much product they can produce, and literally the product that they can produce is a function of ambient temperature and how much power the gas turbine can make. And gas pipelines, ethylene processing plants, and so on. And when you start getting into these industrial processes, the revenue piece, the incremental revenue piece, is actually a much more powerful effect, generating a product rather than electricity. And we see the industrial processes as being a big hit for our product as well. And like for example in India, we're working with fertilizer companies, and India's got a lot of people and they need to feed a lot of people, and fertilizer is the first priority. So getting more out of those plants is a big deal, and our system does it without any water, with almost no incremental power requirements, and more efficient than their existing plant itself. So the industrial processes are also another really interesting market for us.
Huh. Yeah. So that's those are massive refineries and petrochemical complexes, et cetera.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate your time very much, Bob. I'm going to switch over here now to our next guest. Actually, Bob, one more question.
Yes. Sure.
Okay. I see a massive market opportunity with rapid potential penetration. You're saying you've got gas turbine and new plant upgrades at $40 billion per year.
Yep.
Is that, you guys see the market every year at $40 billion for this?
No, I think it's down a little bit now. But I had I call it a much more difficult business I started before. It's a company called PSM, Power Systems Manufacturing, that generated the largest aftermarket parts supplier for all these frame engines that are out there running. And our goal was to get 10% of the market, and we actually achieved that in the markets we were in. And if we get 10% of this market, even if it's down 20 or 30%, it's still a multi-billion-dollar a year business, with basically a serial production product. So it's we spent a lot of time developing the business plan as well as the product, to kind of meet that business plan. So it could be quick to install and efficient, and I'll say extremely profitable business. So we're really excited about it.
Great. So last question. So let's say 2 years ago, your business plan. How was 2017 relative to business plan? 3 years ago, business plan. Was it better or in line or worse than expectations?
It wasn't as good as expectations. But I'll say I have very high expectations. The value of our business is growing tremendously. And for us, and I think we kind of started off on this point, getting this utility adoption here in the U.S. and actually globally. Half these, we're associated with 13 utilities now globally, and getting that, market seating at those utilities with a rollout plan. I mean, some of these utilities have a half a gigawatt to a gigawatt rollout plan of this equipment over the next 2 or 3 years. So, I think, like I said earlier, that 2018 is our year that we get these pilots in and demonstrations in, and so.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Bob.